So my name is Preeya Bailie. I'm the Director of Central Commercial Function within NHS England. I have a unique role because I not only oversee the commercial activity within NHS England, which is the centre of the NHS, but I also work with the 210 procurement departments across the NHS and support them with their commercial activity. I'm also responsible for the procurement talent in the NHS because developing and supporting and creating talented teams is something I'm really passionate about. I toyed with two words. I toyed with exciting because this is a real opportunity to shine a light on procurement. I've spent the last few weeks speaking to every single chief exec across the NHS about how they need to ensure their procurement teams are ready for the Act, but also it's an opportunity to really raise the profile. It's exciting, it's also opportunity, was the second word I really thought about. What the Act brings is around transparency. It really pushes us to have much more conversations with our suppliers. And I think that is a real opportunity for procurements to really think more outside the box and have some of those discussions. The innovation that the Act drives in the NHS, innovation is really important to us. We have a lot of medical products that we want to ensure the Act supports us on SMEs. So again, bringing all of that together in the Act is really exciting and really an opportunity for procurement. I think the e-learning offering from GCF is amazing. I think the prospect of a new Act coming in, sort of brand new for procurement teams. I mean, in the NHS, we have 4,000 procurement people buying, and the prospect of this new Act coming for some of them has been really daunting. They've thought about how do they prepare their teams, they've thought about how do they fund that training. And so for the GCF to offer these 10 modules for the teams has been fantastic. We're almost doing a little bit of competition, especially in NHS England, around completing the modules, but also at the end of it, there's an accreditation. And what we're highlighting to the executives is your team are accredited, your team are ready. I think the e-learning is helpful as well. You know, people can do it in the comfort of their homes, they can do it at their own pace, they can go back over it. And when you complete the learning, it asks you a set of questions. So again, you can then check how far you are in terms of your progress, how much your knowledge, but when you get right to the end, you then complete all the responses or test to get your accreditation. So been really grateful the GCF has put this on. It helps you to prepare from the old PCR to the new PCR, thinking about the difference in the regulation, but also how you start to use some of these new requirements of the regulation. The project that I want to talk about, which I'm really proud about, is the new NHS National Agreement. So the NHS, with all of the rises in energy, the NHS spending was going from 600 million a year to nearly 1.3 billion a year is what the NHS was going to have to spend on energy. And that really drove the question around, is the NHS buying energy in the best way? And the group of heads of procurement, so the 210, we got together as we do each year, and energy was one of those conversations that came up. And we asked Crown Commercial Services to come to present to us about energy. And when they started to describe how energy is bought, how it is traded on the market, the consensus in the room was we need to partner with people who really know the market to drive the best value for the NHS. And the agreement was that we wanted Crown Commercial Services to create an NHS basket, so a buying route just for us, to cover not only our demand, but also our profile. I think when you go into a hospital, you know a hospital's hot all the time. So thinking about our profile and how we use energy, but also thinking about how can we come together as the NHS, what are some of the opportunities around savings, economies of scales, discounts that we could have, but also when we start to put our volume together, could we think about what are some of the investments that we could make? But also as the NHS, we want to be green in our energy as well. So coming together, how can that make us much more collaborative? And how can we achieve some of those targets? So we set up last year in partnership with Crown Commercial Services, we have set up the first NHS Energy Basket. We have 133 out of the 210 trusts signed up already. We know we are now the biggest buying consortium of energy in the country. So bigger, not only in public sector, but the entire country. And actually so big, we have to sometimes be a little bit careful of how we buy, because we could actually, based on our demand, drive up the prices for others. So really need to think about the market. But it's allowed us to have sight of our data. We can see the contracts of every hospital. We can see the price that every hospital is paying. We can see the usage. And the conversation at our last board was around putting forward smart meterage, because actually if we get the live data, we can now start to target those hospitals that are real outliers. So I think what it's driven for, great partnership with Crown Commercial Services, really great access to their experts around how we buy energy. It's been great collaboration for the NHS to come together and talk about how we buy energy. It's driven our prices down. We think we will save 60 million this year. And so again, really good for the taxpayer, great for the NHS overall, but the opportunities now, especially as we start to look at green energy, is how can the NHS come together to drive this forward. So it's the first of its kind. I was really glad to lead on this, but thinking about what are some of the other opportunities that we could do to drive this together. I support the communities of practice because the change the Procurement Act is bringing is significant. And for some people, this can be overwhelming around how much this change is going to mean. And what the communities of practice does is it highlights where those changes will be. So drawing attention to people where those changes will be, for them to understand the changes and understand the impact. But wider than that, it brings together the different commercial professionals. So being able to learn from each other across government, but also to share best practice. And this is something we're going to all have to find our way with a little bit. So as we develop our learning, being able to share that with our colleagues, I think is going to benefit all of us. So my message regarding the Procurement Act is embrace this change. This is a real, as an individual, think about the opportunity this brings for you to shine a light in your organisation around commercial. Think about how this can help you to showcase the value that you bring and deliver for your organisation. I think focus on what you must change now, what is the must do, what you must know about now. There is a lot to learn around the Act, but actually really focus on what's essential for day one, because not all of it is required for day one. And I think my last message is about sharing best practice. So as you develop and you share and you learn more and you implement what's in the Act, how can you share that with your colleagues so they can learn from your experience as well? The Act really talks a lot about innovation, and it also talks a lot about SMEs. And I think I want to see, especially my colleagues within the NHS, to really use the Act for that. The competitive negotiated procedure, I hope I got that word right, really allows for some of those conversations, but even opening up the frameworks allows for that as innovation develops within our small SMEs, they can join the frameworks and we can have access to that. So I do want to encourage my colleagues to be ambitious and to really use the opportunity the Act brings, especially around innovation for the NHS.